Tonight, we're taking a journey to the darker side of Oo. But we're not going to talk about the obvious apocalypse. We're not here to retell the history of the Mushroom War. Instead, we're going to walk through the ruins that everyone else has forgotten. Anyone who's spent enough time in this candy-coloured world knows the truth. The horror isn't in the explosion itself, it's in the silence that came after. Let's start with the man who sacrificed his own mind to save a child from the fallout. Before he was Ice King, kidnapping princesses and writing terrible fan fiction, he was Simon Petrikov, antiquarian, scholar, a man who wore glasses and cardigans and probably had strong opinions about proper tea temperature. He was normal, boring even, the kind of guy who'd spend Saturday nights cataloguing ancient artifacts and calling it a good time. Then he found a crown in a Scandinavian dockworker's basement, put it on as a joke, and spent the next 1,000 years forgetting he was ever human at all. This is the story of how Adventure Time took a silly villain with penguin friends and turned him into the most heartbreaking character in modern animation. This is about dementia, sacrifice, and what happens when saving someone you love means losing yourself completely. This is about Simon Petrikov, the man who died so slowly that nobody noticed he was gone until it was far too late. Let's talk about the crown. That beautiful, terrible magic crown with its 3 glowing gems and its whispered promises of power. Simon didn't want to wear it. The first time he put it on, he saw things, felt things. The crown showed him visions, gave him abilities, and scared him so badly he documented everything in a video message. He knew something was wrong. He knew the crown was changing him, corrupting him, eating away at who he was one thought at a time. But then the Mushroom War happened, bombs fell, the world burned, and Simon was left wandering through the apocalypse with a little girl named Marceline who needed protection more than he needed his sanity. So he put the crown back on, not because he wanted to, because she was dying from radiation poisoning and the crown could keep her alive, because monsters were hunting them through the ruins and magic was the only weapon he had left, because sometimes being a good person means sacrificing everything you are for someone who needs you. Every time he wore the crown, it took a little more. His memories, his personality, his ability to recognize the difference between Simon Petrikov and the Ice King. The crown wasn't just magic, it was a parasite burrowing into his brain and rewriting his neural pathways until the man who put it on wasn't the same man who took it off, and Simon knew. He documented it all, leaving video messages for Betty, trying desperately to hold on to himself while the crown turned his thoughts to ice and madness. Imagine that. Imagine feeling yourself disappear. Not dying, which at least has the mercy of ending, but slowly, day by day, forgetting who you were. Your favourite memories fade, your personality shifts. The people you love become strangers. You look in the mirror and recognise the face but can't remember why it matters. And worst of all, there are moments of clarity where you realise what's happening and can't stop it. That's not fantasy. That's dementia. That's Alzheimer's. Adventure Time took one of the most terrifying real-world conditions and wrapped it in magical ice and penguin sidekicks, and somehow made it even more devastating, because we're watching it happen in real time across 1,000 years, Marceline remembers. She was there when Simon was still Simon, when he'd sing her songs and protect her from the monsters, and promise everything would be okay, even when the world was ending. She watched him put on the crown again and again, each time coming back a little less like her Simon, and a little more like something else. By the time she was grown, by the time she was a vampire queen with her own trauma to unpack, Simon was gone entirely. Replaced by Ice King, a lonely wizard who didn't remember why he collected princesses or wrote fan fiction, or built an ice castle to keep everyone out. And here's the cruelest part. Ice King is happy. Not always, not completely, but he's not tortured by the knowledge of what he lost because he doesn't remember losing anything. He thinks he's always been Ice King. The Magic Kingdom is his home, the penguins are his friends, and kidnapping Princess Bubblegum is just what he does on Tuesdays. He's irritating, pathetic, desperate for attention, but he's not suffering the way Simon suffered. The crown didn't just steal his identity, it made him content with the theft, but Marceline knows. Every time Ice King shows up, every time he acts like a creepy old man hitting on women 1,000 years younger than him, every time he's defeated and sent home alone, Marceline sees the ghost of Simon Petrikov buried underneath. She can't save him because there's nothing left to save. She can't explain what he was because he wouldn't believe her. All she can do is tolerate his presence and remember when he was the closest thing to a father she ever had. The episode I Remember You is where it all breaks. Ice King finds old photos, scraps of memory, and tries to write a song with Marceline. He doesn't understand why she's crying. He doesn't recognise the lyrics he wrote for her 1,000 years ago when he was still Simon. He just knows something about this hurts, something about her matters, but his brain is too frozen to piece together why. And Marceline has to sit there, watching the man who saved her life struggle to remember she exists, knowing that explaining it won't fix anything because the crown won't let him hold on to the truth. It's watching your parent forget your name. It's watching someone you love disappear inside their own head. It's the special horror of being remembered incorrectly, of being replaced in someone's mind by a distorted version that doesn't match reality. Except in Adventure Time, it's permanent. There's no medication, no treatment, no hope of recovery. Simon put on the crown to save Marceline, and the cost was Simon himself. The show even gives us glimpses of what was lost. Videotapes of Simon pre-crown, rambling about his research and his girlfriend Betty, being awkward and sweet and so painfully, obviously human. Then we see him during the war, crown on his head, protecting Marceline while slowly losing his grip on language and thought. "I'm sorry I can't help you. I'm too far gone." And he was right. By the time we meet Ice King in episode 1, Simon Petrikov has been dead for centuries. He just forgot to stop moving. But Ice King keeps making friends, keeps trying to connect, keeps building elaborate fantasies where he's the hero and everyone loves him, because somewhere deep in his frozen brain, Simon's loneliness is still screaming. The crown didn't erase his need for human connection. It just broke his ability to achieve it. So he kidnaps princesses, writes fan fiction about himself, forces Finn and Jake to listen to his stories, anything to fill the void where his memories used to live. And the princesses, they're not really about romance. They're about Betty. Somewhere in the ice and madness, Simon is still searching for the woman he loved, the one who disappeared before the bombs fell. He doesn't remember her name, doesn't remember her face, just remembers that someone was supposed to be there and isn't. So he collects princesses like broken substitutes, trying to fill a Betty-shaped hole with any woman who'll tolerate his presence for 5 minutes. It doesn't work. It never works, because you can't replace a person with a concept, and Ice King doesn't even remember what he's trying to replace. Then there's the episode Betty, where through magic and time travel shenanigans, Simon briefly returns. For one episode, the crown's hold breaks, and Simon Petrikov wakes up in his own body after 900 years of being buried alive in his own mind. And what does he do? He tries to destroy the crown. He begs Betty not to sacrifice herself to save him. He wants to die rather than go back to being Ice King because he knows. He knows what it's like to be trapped inside his own head, watching Ice King pilot his body like a puppet, unable to scream or fight or even remember why he should. But Betty saves him anyway. Betty becomes magic herself to keep Simon alive, and he loses her all over again. Except this time, as Ice King, he won't even remember she tried. The tragedy of Simon Petrikov isn't that he became a villain. It's that he became a joke, a punchline, a pathetic old man that everyone tolerates but nobody respects. His sacrifice, his love, his desperate attempt to save a little girl in the apocalypse, all of it buried under centuries of magical corruption and forgotten memories. He gave up everything to protect Marceline, and his reward was forgetting he ever did it. That's the crown's real curse, not the ice magic, not the extended lifespan, not even the madness. It's the theft of meaning. Simon's choice mattered, his love mattered. But the crown took that away, turned his tragedy into comedy, his sacrifice into a running gag about kidnapping princesses. And maybe that's the darkest thing Adventure Time ever did. Not showing us the horror of losing yourself, but showing us what happens after. When the person you saved moves on, when the world forgets you were ever different, when your greatest act of love becomes invisible because the crown won't let anyone remember it happened, Simon Petrikov saved Marceline's life. Then he spent 1,000 years not knowing he did. Tell me that's not the most devastating love story you've ever heard. Ice King just wanted someone to care. He didn't know he already succeeded 900 years ago. He just forgot. Section 3. Section 3. The Lich. Death walks in awe. Let's talk about the thing that scares Finn. Not Ice King, not the Duke of Nuts. Not even the Fear Feaster, which literally eats fear. We're talking about the Lich, the actual cosmic embodiment of extinction. The thing that wants every living creature in every dimension to stop existing, and has the power to make it happen. Adventure Time gave children a villain voiced by Ron Perlman who literally represents the heat death of the universe, and somehow nobody at Cartoon Network stopped them. The Lich doesn't want to rule Ooh, doesn't want treasure, power, or respect. He wants everything dead, not conquered, not transformed. Dead. Gone. Erased from existence so thoroughly that even the memory of life vanishes into the void. He is the last scholar of Golb, the ambassador of entropy, the final argument against hope. And unlike every other villain in the show, he's not funny, he's not redeemable, and he never, ever stops. Because the Lich isn't just evil, he's the inevitable conclusion of existence itself. Here's where it gets dark. The Lich was born from the mushroom bomb, that same nuclear weapon that created the land of Ooh, that turned Earth into a magical wasteland that started this whole adventure. It didn't just kill millions of people, it gave birth to something worse. The Lich crawled out of that green glowing crater as the personification of extinction, wearing the radiation like a crown, and carrying the weight of humanity's worst decision in his skeletal hands. Think about what that means. Humans built a bomb so destructive, so fundamentally wrong, that it spawned a supernatural entity whose only purpose is finishing what the bomb started. The Mushroom War tried to end all life on Earth. It failed, so the fallout created the Lich to complete the job properly. We literally nuked ourselves so hard that Death got an upgrade and a personal vendetta, and he almost succeeded, multiple times. The first time we see him, he's possessing a snail, because even when reduced to the smallest, most pathetic form possible, the Lich is patient enough to wait for his moment. Then he possesses Princess Bubblegum, because why not corrupt the person holding Ooh together from the inside? Then he tricks Finn into helping him access the multiverse, because heroes are useful idiots when you know how to lie. But it's his voice that really sells the horror. Ron Perlman delivers every line like a eulogy for reality itself. You are alone, child. There is only darkness for you, and only death for your people. Not a threat. A statement of fact. The Lich doesn't gloat. He doesn't need to. He's not fighting against heroes. He's waiting for entropy to do his work for him. Time is on his side because time ends everything eventually. The show even gives us his origin story in gold stars, and it's somehow worse than you'd imagine. The Lich existed before the Mushroom War, just waiting in the primordial ooze of ancient Earth, a cosmic mistake that predates human civilization. Then the bomb gave him form and purpose. He went from abstract concept to walking nightmare, and his first act was to try and end all life in the universe, not out of anger or revenge, just because that's what he is. Death doesn't need motivation, it just needs opportunity. Here's the thing that makes the Lich actually terrifying in a way most cartoon villains aren't. He wins. Not permanently, but often enough that you realise he's not some bumbling antagonist who exists to make Finn look good. In Escape from the Citadel, he manipulates Finn into freeing him from prison, then proceeds to casually murder cosmic criminals just by touching them. His blood is so toxic it corrupts everything it touches. His presence makes reality sicker. He doesn't fight so much as exist at you until you stop being alive. And when Finn finally defeats him by dumping him in the Citadel's healing juice, does he die? No, he becomes Sweet Pea, a giant baby that still carries the Lich's essence buried deep inside. Because you can't kill death. You can only postpone it, contain it, transform it into something innocent and hope it stays that way. The Lich is literally so fundamental to existence that even when you destroy his body and rewrite his being, he's still there, waiting, growing, remembering what he used to be. Sweet Pea's whole existence is the show asking a genuinely disturbing question. If you take pure evil and give it a second chance as a child, does the evil go away? Or does it just hide until it's strong enough to emerge again? Can you really redeem the embodiment of extinction by making it cute and giving it a learning disability? Or are you just creating a ticking time bomb with the face of innocence? The Lich doesn't care about pain, doesn't fear imprisonment, doesn't negotiate or compromise. He's the ultimate nihilist, the final boss of existential dread, and his entire philosophy can be summed up in one sentence. Nothing matters because everything dies. And here's the worst part. He's not wrong. Eventually entropy wins. Eventually stars burn out. Eventually the universe reaches heat death, and everything that ever existed becomes meaningless background radiation in an infinite void. The Lich is just trying to speed up the process, but Adventure Time doesn't let that philosophy win unchallenged. Finn fights the Lich not because he thinks he can permanently destroy death, but because right now, in this moment, people are alive and worth protecting. Princess Bubblegum contains him, not because she believes evil can be eliminated, but because every day the Lich stays trapped is another day her people get to exist. Even Sweet Pea, corrupted and confused, chooses kindness over destruction, because meaning isn't about eternal victory. It's about choosing good, even when you know you'll eventually lose. That's the real battle against the Lich, not physical combat, not magical solutions, but the philosophical decision that existence matters, even if it's temporary. That love and friendship and adventure have value even though they'll end. That the heat death of the universe doesn't erase the importance of right now. The Lich says everything ends in darkness. Finn says yes, but not today. And somehow, in a show about candy kingdoms and magical dogs, that becomes the most profound statement about mortality you'll ever hear in animation. The Lich represents the fear we all carry. That nothing we do matters because we're all going to die anyway. That the universe is cold and empty and ultimately hostile to consciousness. That entropy always wins and love is just a chemical reaction we tell ourselves has meaning. Adventure Time looks at that fear, acknowledges it's real and says fight anyway. Not because you'll win forever, because right now someone needs you. Right now there's still adventure to be had. Right now death hasn't won yet and that's enough. The Lich is still out there, contained in Sweet Pea, waiting in the multiverse, existing as a fundamental force of reality that can't be destroyed, only delayed, and one day probably he'll escape again. One day entropy really will win. One day everything that Finn fought for will be dust and silence. But that day isn't today, and until it is, the Lich remains what he's always been. A reminder that darkness exists, that evil is real, that death is patient and inevitable and completely indifferent to how much you love the people you're trying to protect. He's the monster under Oo's bed, and he never sleeps. Sweet dreams, knowing that somewhere in the multiverse, the last scholar of Golb is still working toward his goal. One world at a time, one reality at a time, until there's nothing left but silence and the satisfaction of a job finally completed. Fall asleep to that, if you can. Ready for Section 4 when you are. Section 4. Section 4. Marceline's 1,000 Years of Survival. Marceline Abadir is over 1,000 years old, plays bass like therapy, and has watched every single person she ever loved either die or forget who she is. She's the vampire queen of the Candy Kingdom, she can shapeshift into terrifying monsters, and she survives by drinking the colour red because actual blood reminds her too much of the apocalypse. Also, she writes songs about her trauma and pretends it's just indie rock. Therapy wasn't really an option after the nukes fell, so music had to do the heavy lifting. Let's start at the beginning. Marceline was 7 years old when the Mushroom War happened. 7. Old enough to understand that the world was ending, young enough to not fully process what that meant. She watched the bombs fall, watched the sky turn green with radiation, watched her mum die slowly from exposure, singing her one last song before the poison finally won. Everything stays, but it still changes. That's what her mother told her. Hold on to that lyric because it's the thesis statement of Marceline's entire existence. Then she was alone. A half-demon child wandering through radioactive ruins, scavenging for food, hiding from mutants, and slowly realizing that everyone she'd ever known was dead or dying. The world didn't end in one dramatic moment. It ended in slow motion, day after day, as the survivors ran out of food and water and hope. Marceline watched it all, remembered it all, carried it with her for 1,000 years because immortality doesn't come with the mercy of forgetting. Enter Simon Petrikov, the man with the magic crown who found a scared little girl and decided to be her guardian, even though he was barely holding on to his own sanity. Simon was the first person after the war who chose to protect Marceline instead of using her. He sang to her, kept her safe from monsters, fed her when food was scarce. He became her father figure in a world where fathers had become an extinct species. And then she watched him disappear too. Not die. That would have been kinder. She watched the ice crown slowly eat away at Simon's mind, watched him forget her name, forget why he was protecting her, forget he was ever human at all. By the time Marceline was grown, Simon was gone, and Ice King had taken his place. Another person lost, except this time the body kept walking around and pretending it didn't recognize her. Imagine that specific flavour of grief. Your father figure is still alive, still talking, still making jokes, but he doesn't remember being your father. He looks at you like a stranger. Every conversation is reintroducing yourself to someone who used to sing you lullabies. You can't mourn him properly because he's not dead. You can't move on because he's right there. You're just stuck in this limbo of loss where the person you loved is simultaneously gone and unavoidable. That's Marceline's relationship with Ice King. He shows up, acts like a creep, kidnaps princesses, and she has to decide every single time whether to tell him who he used to be. And every time she does, he either doesn't believe her or forgets within hours. The crown won't let him keep the truth. So she stopped trying and started just tolerating his presence, because at least when Ice King is around, she's near the ghost of Simon Petrikov. But wait, it gets worse. Let's talk about Hunson Abadir, Marceline's actual biological father, the immortal demon lord who rules the Nightosphere and can literally suck the souls out of people for fun. He wasn't around when Marceline was born, wasn't around when she needed protection during the war, wasn't around when her mother died. He showed up later, after she'd already survived the apocalypse alone, and expected her to just accept him as her dad. Except Hunson Abadir is incapable of understanding human emotion. He's a soul-sucking demon who thinks stealing Marceline's toys and eating her fries is bonding. He doesn't get why she's angry, doesn't understand that immortal beings still need emotional support, keeps trying to force a father-daughter relationship without putting in any of the actual work that makes someone a parent. And Marceline is stuck with him forever because they're both immortal, which means this dysfunctional dynamic doesn't end with death. It just continues infinitely. So let's review. Marceline's mother died from radiation poisoning. Her father figure forgot she existed. Her biological father is an emotionally unavailable demon who thinks abandonment is funny. Everyone else she ever knew in the pre-war world is dead, and she's immortal, which means she gets to carry this trauma forever while watching new friends grow old and die around her. The show never says it outright, but Marceline has depression. Not the quirky sad girl aesthetic that pop culture loves. Actual, clinical, vampire depression born from centuries of accumulated loss. She sleeps during the day not because she's a vampire, but because depression makes you want to hide from consciousness. She floats instead of walking because even gravity feels like too much effort sometimes. She pushes people away before they get too close, because everyone she's ever loved has either left or died, and she's learned that caring about mortals means signing up for inevitable heartbreak. And her music. Oh, her music. Marceline doesn't write pop songs. She writes musical diary entries about her trauma and performs them like it's no big deal. I'm Just Your Problem is about Princess Bubblegum, but it's really about feeling fundamentally broken and unlovable. Everything Stays is her mother's last words, transformed into a lullaby about how change is the only constant. Remember You is her begging Ice King to remember Simon, even though she knows he can't. Every song is therapy she can't afford, grief she can't process, and pain she can't share because who would understand what it's like to survive 1,000 years? The answer is nobody. Marceline is functionally alone in her experience of existence. Everyone else in Ooh was either born after the war or has forgotten it happened. She's the only one still carrying the weight of the old world, and music is the only language that lets her express it without completely falling apart. But here's where Adventure Time does something interesting with Marceline's character. She's not just a tragedy, she's also genuinely cool, funny, and capable of joy. She pranks Finn and Jake. She plays bass with actual enthusiasm. She has complicated relationships with Princess Bubblegum that involve both deep hurt and genuine affection. She's not defined solely by her trauma, even though her trauma is legitimately overwhelming. That's the real complexity of Marceline. She's survived 1,000 years of loss and hasn't become bitter or cruel. She's protective of her friends even though she knows they'll die eventually. She keeps trying to connect with Ice King even though it hurts every single time. She lets herself care about people despite knowing from experience that caring leads to pain. Because the alternative is becoming like her father. Cold, detached, treating immortality as an excuse to stop feeling anything at all. And the show rewards that choice. Slowly, painfully, Marceline builds a new family. Finn and Jake become her friends. Princess Bubblegum becomes something more complicated than friendship. Even Ice King, in his scattered moments of clarity, provides connection. She's still carrying 1,000 years of grief, still writing songs about her dead mother, still dealing with abandonment issues that would break most people. But she's also laughing, adventuring, and choosing to participate in life even though life has consistently hurt her. That's not resilience. That's defiance. Marceline looked at 1,000 years of loss and said, I'm going to keep caring anyway. I'm going to keep making music anyway. I'm going to keep living anyway. Not because it's easy or because she's healed. Because the alternative is letting the apocalypse win retroactively by turning her into something dead inside. The cost of immortality isn't just watching people die. It's deciding every single day whether continuing to exist is worth the accumulated pain. For Marceline, the answer is complicated. Some days she floats through her house in the dark, too tired to engage with the world. Some days she writes songs about how everything she touches eventually leaves. Some days she plays bass so loud it shakes the kingdom, because music is the only thing that makes her feel alive. But she keeps going, through the depression, through the abandonment issues, through the weight of being the last person who remembers the world before. She survives not because she's strong, but because she's stubborn. Because somewhere between watching her mother die and watching Simon forget her name, Marceline decided that existence is an act of rebellion against everything that tried to kill her. And honestly, that's more heroic than anything Finn does with a sword. So next time you see Marceline floating upside down, eating red, playing her axe bass like it's the only thing keeping her tethered to reality, remember what you're actually watching. You're seeing 1,000 years of survival, compressed into one cool vampire queen who uses humour and music to cope with grief that would destroy most people. She's not okay. She's probably never going to be fully okay, but she's here, playing bass in a post-apocalyptic candy kingdom, and that's its own kind of victory. The apocalypse took everything from Marceline except her ability to write sick bass lines, and somehow, against all odds, that was enough. Ready for Section 5 when you are. Section 5. Section 5. Princess Bubblegum's Candy Surveillance State. Princess Bubblegum is smart, compassionate, loves science, and rules her kingdom with an iron fist wrapped in bubblegum pink gloves. She's the benevolent dictator who'll hug you at a party and then secretly install cameras in your house to make sure you're not plotting treason. She creates life from sugar and controls it through biochemistry. She's Oo's greatest protector and its most dangerous autocrat all at the same time, and the truly scary part, she genuinely believes she's doing the right thing. Let's start with the obvious. Princess Bubblegum created most of her citizens. Not gave birth to them, created them. She's a mad scientist playing God with candy, spawning sentient beings from sugar and science, then expecting them to worship her as their eternal monarch. The Candy Kingdom isn't a democracy where Princess Bubblegum won a fair election. It's a laboratory where the head researcher decided to rule over her experiments indefinitely. Think about what that means for the average candy person. You didn't ask to exist. You were created by someone who decided your intelligence level, your personality traits, your fundamental biochemistry before you took your first breath. Princess Bubblegum looked at sugar molecules and thought, I can make people out of this. And nobody stopped her because in post-apocalyptic Ooh, creating life is apparently just a Tuesday afternoon project. And here's the really disturbing part. She can control them. Literally. Princess Bubblegum can manipulate her citizens on a molecular level because she understands their biology better than they understand themselves. She's not just their ruler, she's their creator and their god and their puppet master all wrapped into one scientifically advanced package. The candy people trust her completely because they're biologically programmed to trust her. That's not loyalty, that's engineered compliance. But Bubblegum would argue she needs that control. The Candy Kingdom is surrounded by threats. The Ice King kidnaps people weekly. The Lich tried to end all existence. Rival kingdoms plot and scheme. Someone has to protect these innocent candy citizens who are, let's be honest, not particularly bright. Most candy people have the intelligence of a confused toddler. They need guidance. They need protection. They need a benevolent dictator to make the hard decisions while they worry about banana guards and root beer. Except benevolent dictators are still dictators, and Bubblegum doesn't just protect her people, she surveils them, controls them, manipulates them when she thinks it's necessary, and she never, ever asks permission. Take the episode The Vault. Princess Bubblegum keeps a secret vault filled with dangerous artifacts, monsters, and anything she deems too hazardous for the public to know about. She doesn't tell anyone it exists, doesn't consult advisors, just unilaterally decides what information her citizens can handle and locks away everything else. Because in her mind, knowledge is dangerous and people are safer being ignorant. That's authoritarianism dressed up as protection. That's the argument every dictator makes. The people can't handle the truth. They're too simple, too emotional, too easily manipulated, so I'll make the hard choices for them. I'll keep the secrets. I'll do whatever's necessary to keep them safe, even if that means lying, spying, and occasionally violating their fundamental rights. And the show knows this. Adventure Time doesn't pretend Princess Bubblegum is perfect. In Goliad, she creates a new candy sphinx to replace her as ruler, and immediately the creation starts mind-controlling citizens. Where did Goliad learn that? From Princess Bubblegum. From watching her creator use surveillance, manipulation, and force to maintain order. The student became a monster by imitating the teacher, and Bubblegum was horrified because she doesn't see herself as monstrous. She sees herself as necessary. But let's talk about Rattleballs. This is where Princess Bubblegum crosses from paranoid protector into actual villain territory. She created the Rattleballs, a group of highly intelligent, highly capable candy warriors designed to protect the kingdom. They were perfect. Too perfect. They were smart enough to think independently, strong enough to challenge her authority, and that terrified her. So she ordered them destroyed. All of them. Not imprisoned, not exiled. Destroyed. She committed genocide against her own creations because they might someday pose a threat to her power. And when one survived, when Rattleballs himself trained Finn in the ancient Gumball Guardian arts, Princess Bubblegum tracked him down and had him dismantled. Not because he was dangerous, because he existed outside her control. That's not protection. That's tyranny. That's creating life, deciding it's inconvenient, and eliminating it before it can question your authority. And the show treats this as genuinely horrifying because it is. Princess Bubblegum looked at sentient beings who loved her kingdom and thought, they're too smart, they might rebel, better kill them all just in case. Preventative murder based on the possibility of future descent. And she doesn't apologize, doesn't see it as a mistake. In her mind, the Rattleballs were a security risk and she neutralized the threat. Efficient, logical, completely horrifying if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. She's willing to commit atrocities if the math says it'll protect the kingdom. The needs of the many outweigh the rights of the few, and she's the one who gets to do the calculation. Her relationship with Finn is built partially on this. She keeps him at arm's length, uses him as a weapon against threats, and manipulates his hero complex to serve her interests. When Finn develops a crush on her, she's aware of it and uses it. Not maliciously, but strategically. She knows Finn will do anything to protect her, so she puts him in situations where his devotion serves the kingdom. It's not evil, it's just cold, calculated, the way a chess player moves pieces without considering that the pieces have feelings, and Marceline sees through it. Their complicated history involves Marceline calling out Bubblegum's control issues, her inability to trust people, her habit of choosing logic over emotion every single time. I'm Just Your Problem isn't just about a breakup. It's about Marceline realizing that Princess Bubblegum will always choose the kingdom over personal relationships, will always sacrifice connection for security, will always be the ruler first and the person second. Because here's the thing about Princess Bubblegum. She's not wrong. The Candy Kingdom genuinely needs protection. Her citizens genuinely are vulnerable. The threats are real, constant, and often existential. In a world where the Lich exists, where Ice King kidnaps people weekly, where interdimensional monsters attack without warning, Maybe you do need a paranoid scientist monarch who's willing to make the hard choices. Maybe surveillance and control are the price of survival in post-apocalyptic ooh. But that doesn't make it right, and the show never lets her off the hook. Princess Bubblegum is constantly challenged by characters who value freedom over security. Finn questions her methods. Marceline refuses to accept her control. Even Lemongrab, her failed creation, serves as a mirror showing what she could become if she let her control issues spiral completely out of control. A screaming dictator who punishes citizens for existing wrong. The tragedy of Princess Bubblegum is that she's trapped. She can't step down because the kingdom would fall apart without her. She can't trust others because betrayal could mean the death of everyone she's created. She can't stop surveilling and controlling because the moment she relaxes, something terrible happens. She's a prisoner of her own competence, forced to be the eternal monarch because nobody else can handle the responsibility. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe she created her citizens to be simple, because smart citizens would question her authority. Maybe she eliminates threats preemptively because she's terrified of losing control. Maybe the surveillance state isn't a necessary evil, but a self-fulfilling prophecy, where her paranoia creates the very conditions that justify more paranoia. Princess Bubblegum is what happens when someone smart enough to save the world decides that saving it requires controlling every variable. She's the technocrat who believes in science, logic, and the greater good, and never quite realizes that the greater good is a concept that can justify almost any atrocity if you're willing to do the math. She's not a villain, she's something more complicated. A hero who's willing to do villainous things, a protector who's also a tyrant, a creator who destroys her creations when they become inconvenient. She's the benevolent dictator paradox made flesh and sugar, and the show asks you to sit with that discomfort without providing easy answers. Would you rather live in the Candy Kingdom under Princess Bubblegum's surveillance, safe but controlled? Or would you take your chances in the wild parts of ooh, free but vulnerable? Would you trust a ruler who spies on you if it means staying alive? At what point does protection become oppression? Princess Bubblegum doesn't know. She just keeps calculating, experimenting, and building her candy surveillance state one citizen at a time. Because someone has to keep the kingdom safe. And if that someone occasionally has to commit genocide, install cameras, and manipulate heroes, well, that's the price of security in the land of ooh. Sweet on the outside. Authoritarian on the inside. That's not just bubblegum flavour. That's the taste of power without accountability, wrapped in pink and served with a smile. Sleep tight knowing there's a candy scientist watching your every move, but only because she loves you. Probably. Unless you become a security risk. Then you're getting rattleballsed. Ready for Section 6 when you are. Section 6. Section 6. Magic Man, Margles, and the philosophy of meaninglessness. Magic Man is the worst person you'll ever meet. Not the Lich, who at least has the decency to be honest about wanting everyone dead. Not even Ice King, who's got the crown as an excuse. Magic Man is a cosmic being with godlike powers who chooses to spend eternity making everyone around him miserable, and he does it with a smile. He turns people inside out, steals their sandwiches, transforms Finn into a foot, and when you ask him why, he just laughs and says, "Because I can." Except there's a reason. There's always a reason. Magic Man wasn't born cruel. He was made cruel. By loss. By grief. By the universe taking away the one thing that made existence bearable and leaving him immortal with nothing but time to remember what he lost. Her name was Margles, and she was everything. Before we get to Margles, let's talk about Mars. Magic Man comes from Mars, the red planet, where immortal cosmic beings live in floating cities and practice magic like it's physics. These aren't gods exactly, but they're close enough. They manipulate reality, bend the rules of existence, and generally operate on a level that makes regular problems seem adorable. What do you mean your crops failed? We can literally create matter from thought. What do you mean you're sad? We're immortal. Just wait it out. Magic Man was one of them. Part of Martian society. Had a brother named Grob Gob Glob Grod, who represented order and responsibility, and all those boring cosmic virtues that keep society functioning, and Magic Man rejected all of it. Not because he was evil, but because he had Margles. She was his partner, his love, his reason for existing in a universe that otherwise felt cold and mathematical. While other Martians worried about cosmic balance and interdimensional stability, Magic Man just wanted to be with Margles. Then she died. Not dramatically, not heroically, just died. Because even cosmic beings can't escape mortality completely. The universe has rules, and one of those rules is that eventually everyone loses something they love. Margles was Magic Man's something, and when she died, she took his meaning with her. Here's where it gets philosophical. Magic Man looked at a universe without Margles and realised something terrible. Nothing matters. All the cosmic responsibility, all the Martian duties, all the rules and regulations and careful maintenance of reality, none of it could save her. He'd bent space and time, manipulated matter and energy, achieved what humans would consider godhood, and it meant nothing because the person he loved was gone, and all his power couldn't bring her back. So he broke. Not in the clean, sympathetic way where you become sad and people comfort you. He broke in the messy, cruel way where you decide that if meaning is dead, then everything is permitted. If the universe took Margles, then he'd take everything from everyone else, not out of revenge, out of philosophy. If nothing matters, then causing pain is no worse than causing joy. If existence is meaningless, then turning people into gross monsters is the same as helping them. It's all arbitrary. It's all pointless. So why not have fun with it? That's nihilism as a lifestyle choice. That's what happens when cosmic beings have existential crises. Magic Man didn't just lose his love. He lost his ability to care about consequences, morality, or the suffering of others. Because in his mind, everyone's suffering anyway. He's just honest about it. At least when he turns you into a foot, you're aware the universe is absurd. Most people go through life pretending things make sense. And his pranks aren't random. They're specifically designed to be cruel in ways that force his victims to confront meaninglessness. He doesn't just steal Jake's sandwich. He makes Jake watch him steal it, then mocks Jake for caring about something as trivial as food. He doesn't just turn Finn into a foot. He makes Finn experience existence from a completely alien perspective, stripping away his identity and forcing him to question what makes him himself. Every prank is a philosophy lesson wrapped in malicious humour. The other Martians banished him for it. His own brother, Grob Gob Glob Grod, the cosmic entity representing order and law, kicked Magic Man off Mars because his nihilistic cruelty was corrupting their society. Think about that. You have to be seriously messed up for godlike beings to look at you and say, yeah, you need to leave the planet. Magic Man achieved that. He was so committed to proving nothing matters that he got exiled from a dimension where reality is negotiable. So he came to Ooh, post-apocalyptic Earth, where everyone's already dealing with trauma, and he can spread his philosophy of meaninglessness to a fresh audience. And Ooh gave him endless opportunities. Finn and Jake trying to be heroes? Adorable. Let's turn one of them inside out and see if heroism survives body horror. Princess Bubblegum trying to maintain order? Cute. Let's create chaos and prove that control is an illusion. Everyone trying to find meaning in the ruins of civilization? Perfect. Magic Man will show them meaning died with the old world. But here's the thing. Adventure Time does brilliantly. The show doesn't let Magic Man's philosophy go unchallenged. Finn and Jake don't accept that nothing matters. They fight back. They maintain their heroism even after being transformed, traumatized, and mocked. They refuse to let one bitter Martian dictate the meaning of their existence. And slowly, painfully, Magic Man starts to realize that his nihilism is just grief wearing a philosophical mask. The episode, You Forgot Your Floaties, breaks it all open. Finn and Jake meet Normal Man, who's just a regular guy living in Ooh, and slowly they realize he's Magic Man after losing his powers. And without his magic, without his cosmic abilities to back up his cruelty, he's just a sad, broken person who misses Margles. The pranks, the torture, the philosophical nihilism, all of it was just elaborate coping mechanisms for grief he couldn't process. He even admits it. When Finn helps him get his powers back, Magic Man has a moment of clarity. He realizes he's been cruel not because nothing matters, but because Margles mattered too much, and losing her broke something fundamental in his cosmic psyche. The nihilism was protective. If nothing matters, then losing Margles doesn't hurt as much. If everyone's suffering is equally meaningless, then his suffering isn't special. He can blend into the general misery of existence and pretend he's not drowning in it. But Ooh doesn't let him hide. Finn, Jake, and even his brother force him to confront his grief directly, and in doing so, they prove his philosophy wrong. Meaning isn't objective. It's not handed down by the universe. It's something you create through connections, through choosing to care even when caring hurts. Margles mattered because Magic Man loved her, and that love was real even though it ended. The pain of loss doesn't prove meaninglessness. It proves the opposite. You can't grieve something that never mattered. Magic Man eventually becomes King of Mars after his brother dies saving Ooh. He takes on responsibility again. Not because he suddenly believes in cosmic order, but because he realizes running from meaning doesn't make it go away. It just makes you cruel. And being cruel to others doesn't heal your own wounds. It just spreads the pain around and calls it philosophy. That's the real lesson of Magic Man. Grief can make you a monster if you let it. Loss can turn you nihilistic if you decide that caring too much is the problem rather than the solution. When the universe takes something precious, you have two choices. You can decide nothing matters and spend eternity proving it through cruelty. Or you can decide that meaning is something you build yourself, even knowing it's temporary, even knowing you'll lose it again. Magic Man chose cruelty for centuries. Then he chose differently, not because his grief disappeared, because he realized that being the worst person in Ooh was just another way of staying connected to Margles through negative space. By rejecting everything she represented, by becoming the opposite of love and kindness and meaning, he kept her alive as the absence he built his identity around. But absence isn't presence, and philosophical nihilism is just depression with a fancy vocabulary. So Magic Man, later King Man, learned what every griever eventually learns. You don't heal by pretending nothing mattered. You heal by accepting that something mattered so much that losing it broke you, and then slowly, painfully, building new meaning from the pieces. The cosmic being who could manipulate reality couldn't manipulate his way out of grief. He just had to feel it. All of it. The way mortals do. The way Margles would have wanted him to. Turns out even gods have to process their trauma eventually. And when they don't, they turn people into feet and call it philosophy. Magic Man spent 1,000 years being cruel because the universe was cruel first. Then he remembered that cruelty isn't a philosophy. It's just pain pretending to be wisdom. And somewhere in the cosmos, maybe Margles would be proud he finally figured it out. Or maybe she'd just be sad it took him so long. Either way, she's still gone, and he's still here, and that's the meaning he has to build from. Not the meaning he wanted, just the meaning that's left. That's nihilism meeting reality. Reality wins. Even on Mars, ready for Section 7 when you are. Section 7. Section 7. Finn's existential crisis and lost fathers. Finn the human is the last of his kind, raised by dogs, wears a dead bear on his head, and spent his childhood believing he was the chosen hero destined to save Ooh from evil. He's got the sword, the courage, the unshakable belief that good always wins if you're brave enough. He's the protagonist, the hero, the kid who thinks moral clarity is as simple as punching bad guys and rescuing princesses. Then the show spent 8 seasons systematically destroying that belief, one traumatic revelation at a time. Let's start with the obvious problem. Finn is an orphan, the last human in Ooh, or so he thinks for most of his childhood. He doesn't know where he came from, who his parents were, or why he ended up alone in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And for a while, that's okay. Jake's family adopted him. He's got a purpose. He's a hero. Who needs biological parents when you've got a magical dog brother and a clear moral compass? Except children who grow up without parents don't just move on. They carry questions. Am I wanted? Am I valuable? Did someone choose to leave me, or was I lost? And those questions shape everything. Finn's hero complex isn't just about saving people. It's about proving he deserves to exist. If he's heroic enough, brave enough, good enough, then maybe the abandonment wasn't because something was wrong with him. Maybe it was just circumstances. Maybe he's actually special. That's trauma disguised as heroism. That's a kid trying to earn love by being perfect, and Adventure Time knows it. Then Billy shows up. Billy the legendary hero, the greatest warrior Ooh has ever seen, and he tells Finn something that shatters the foundation of his identity. Your dad is alive. He's out there. in a cosmic prison called the Citadel, surrounded by the worst criminals in the multiverse, and Finn, desperate for connection, desperate to believe his father is someone worth knowing, sets out to rescue him. This is where it gets heartbreaking. Finn builds an entire fantasy in his head during that journey. His dad is a hero too. His dad was captured doing something noble. His dad has been waiting for Finn to rescue him, so they can finally have the father-son relationship Finn's been missing his entire life. It's not even conscious. Finn just needs his father to be good, because if his father is good, then Finn's abandonment was noble sacrifice instead of rejection. Then he meets Martin, and Martin is a deadbeat. Not tragically, not sympathetically, just a selfish, cowardly con artist who ran away from responsibility and ended up in cosmic prison because he scammed the wrong people. He doesn't care about Finn, doesn't recognise him, and when Finn explains who he is, when this child opens his heart and says, "I'm your son, I came to rescue you," Martin's response is basically, "Cool, help me escape, then we'll never have to see each other again." That's the moment Finn's hero narrative dies. His father isn't a fallen hero, he's just a bad person who happened to reproduce. And Finn, who spent his entire life believing in the goodness of people, in the power of heroism, in the idea that family means something, has to confront the reality that his father abandoned him because he's selfish. Not cursed, not forced by circumstances, just selfish, and it gets worse. During the escape from the Citadel, Finn loses his arm, ripped off by Martin as he escapes, leaving Finn injured and his father disappearing into space without looking back. The physical wound is bad enough, but the emotional wound is permanent. Finn gave everything to save his father, and his father repaid him by literally leaving him broken and alone. Again. That arm becomes a symbol. Finn tries to replace it, gets a grass arm that almost corrupts him, gets a robot arm that reminds him he's damaged, eventually grows the arm back through weird magic shenanigans, but the loss remains. You can't unsee your father abandoning you. You can't unknow that the person who was supposed to protect you chose not to. The arm grows back, the trust doesn't, and Finn starts questioning everything. If his father is bad, does that mean Finn is bad? Is heroism genetic, or is he just one bad decision away from becoming Martin? If being good doesn't guarantee that good things happen to you, why be good at all? The moral clarity that guided his childhood becomes complicated, messy, full of grey areas that don't have simple sword-based solutions. His relationships suffer. Finn's crush on Princess Bubblegum was never healthy, but post-Martin it becomes desperate. He fixates on her because she's safe, unchanging, a moral authority who can tell him he's still good. But Bubblegum rejects him, gently but firmly, because she's an immortal candy scientist and he's a teenage boy with abandonment issues. The rejection hits harder than it should because it's not just romantic, it's another person choosing to leave. Then there's Flame Princess, Finn's first real relationship, and he approaches it like a hero quest. Save the princess from her father, help her understand emotions, be the good influence that makes her better. Except people aren't quests. Flame Princess is a person with her own agency, her own anger, her own need to figure out who she is without a boyfriend dictating her development. And when Finn manipulates her, when he tries to control the relationship like he controls his adventures, she burns him, literally and emotionally. That relationship teaches Finn a harder lesson than any villain could. Being the hero doesn't mean you're right. Having good intentions doesn't excuse bad behaviour. You can hurt people you love by treating them like problems to solve instead of people to understand. And when Flame Princess leaves him, it's not because she's evil or cursed or manipulated by a villain. It's because Finn wasn't emotionally mature enough to treat her as an equal. Another abandonment, another failure, another reminder that heroism doesn't solve everything. Finn starts getting darker. He's still a hero, still saves the kingdom, still fights monsters, but there's an edge now, a desperation. He's proving something to himself, and the proof requires bigger risks, harder fights, more dramatic victories. Because if he stops being heroic, what is he? Just an abandoned kid with daddy issues and a collection of failed relationships. The hero complex isn't helping him anymore. It's consuming him, and the show doesn't let him off easy. Finn makes mistakes. He hurts people. He lets his need to be the hero override his judgment. In Breezy, he loses his arm again, and spirals into self-destructive behaviour, using his flower arm to attract bees and numb his emotions. It's one of the darkest episodes in the series because it shows Finn at his lowest. Not fighting a villain, not on a quest, just a traumatized teenager who doesn't know how to process pain except by creating more of it. His relationship with Susan Strong adds another layer. She might be human, which means Finn isn't the last of his kind, which should be comforting, but it's not. Because Susan was experimented on, modified, turned into something between human and mutant by forces she didn't understand. If that's what happened to other humans, if Finn's people survived by becoming something else, then what does being human even mean? Is he clinging to an identity that doesn't exist anymore? Then he meets other humans, islands full of them, living in isolation, and they're not heroes. They're just people, scared, flawed, making the same mistakes as everyone else in Oo. And Finn's mother is there, Minerva. She didn't abandon him out of cruelty. She tried to save him, sent him away to protect him from the authoritarian society she'd created. Another parent with good intentions and terrible execution, proving that even love doesn't guarantee happiness. But Minerva wanted to keep him, wanted him to stay on the islands, safe and controlled and never taking risks, and Finn chose to leave, chose Ua over his biological family. Because home isn't about blood, it's about the people who let you be yourself, even when yourself is messy and broken and still figuring things out. Jake's family is his real family, the dogs who raised him without needing him to be perfect. That's the lesson Finn needed. Not that his father was secretly good, but that fathers don't define you. Family is what you build, not what you're born into. By the end of the series, Finn isn't the same hero who started the show. He's been abandoned, rejected, physically and emotionally wounded, forced to confront the reality that goodness doesn't equal happiness, and being right doesn't mean you win. He's lost his innocence, his arm, his confidence, and had to rebuild all of it without the comfort of simple answers. But he's still here, still fighting. Not because he thinks heroes always win, but because someone has to try. Not because he's proving his worth to absent parents, but because he's proven it to himself. The hero complex transformed into something healthier, not trying to earn love through perfection, just trying to do good because that's what makes life meaningful, even when life treats you unfairly. Finn learned the hardest lesson Adventure Time teaches. Being good is its own reward because the universe doesn't give out prizes for heroism. You save people, and they still die. You love people, and they still leave. You do everything right, and bad things still happen. The moral arc of the universe doesn't bend toward justice. It just bends, and you have to decide whether to keep fighting anyway. And Finn does. Not because he's the chosen hero. Not because his father was secretly proud. Not because Princess Bubblegum will finally love him back. He fights because Jake believes in him. Because the Candy Kingdom needs protection. Because in a world built on nuclear trauma and cosmic horror, someone should at least try to make things better. That's real heroism. Not the fantasy version where good always wins. The messy version where you keep trying, even after the universe proves you're not special. Your father's a deadbeat, and your arm got ripped off for nothing. The version where you're just a kid with a sword, doing your best, knowing it won't always be enough. Finn the human isn't the last hero because he's perfect. He's the last hero because he keeps showing up even after learning that heroism is thankless, painful, and doesn't guarantee anything except more opportunities to get hurt. But somebody has to be the hero. Might as well be the abandoned kid with daddy issues and a dead bear hat. At least he's honest about being broken. Ready for Section 8 when you are. Section 8. Section 8. Golb and the chaos that devours all. There's a thing in Adventure Time that makes the Lich look like a neighbourhood bully. Something that existed before magic, before the multiverse, before the concept of existence itself had a chance to get comfortable. It's not a villain you can fight. It's not a force you can reason with. It's not even evil in any meaningful sense, because evil requires intent, and this thing operates on a level where intent doesn't exist. Its name is Golb, and Golb doesn't destroy. Golb uncreates. Let's be clear about what that means. The Lich wants to kill everything. That's bad, but at least death is part of the natural order. Things live, things die, entropy wins, roll credits. But Golb doesn't kill. Golb erases, unmakes, takes things that exist and returns them to the primordial nothing they came from. Not dead, not transformed, just gone, like they were never real in the first place. Imagine something so fundamentally hostile to reality that its presence makes the universe forget how to hold itself together. That's Golb. The embodiment of chaos at its most pure and terrifying. Not the fun kind of chaos where things get weird and unpredictable. The mathematical kind where structure dissolves, meaning collapses, and everything that makes reality coherent simply stops working. And here's the truly disturbing part. Golb isn't trying to end reality. That would imply motivation, purpose, some kind of comprehensible goal. Golb just is, a cosmic entity that exists in the spaces between dimensions, occasionally reaching into ordered reality to remind everyone that chaos is the default state, and everything else is a temporary exception. The universe didn't create Golb. Golb is what the universe came from. The void before the beginning, the silence before sound, the nothing that everything is desperately trying not to fall back into. Magic Man knows about Golb. His brother Gob Glob Grod studied Golb, tried to understand it, and realized that understanding chaos is a contradiction. You can observe it, you can be destroyed by it, but you can't comprehend something that operates outside the rules of comprehension. The Martians, cosmic beings with godlike powers, looked at Golb and collectively decided the best strategy was to stay very, very far away and hope it doesn't notice them. Because when Golb notices you, you don't get to exist anymore. And the worst part? Nobody remembers you were ever there. Golb doesn't just erase you from reality, it erases you from causality. Your life, your relationships, your impact on the universe, all of it gets retroactively deleted. You become a person-shaped hole in everyone's memory, and they don't even know something's missing because missing implies there was something there to begin with. The show doesn't really introduce Golb properly until the finale, and when it does, it's appropriately horrifying. This massive red-eyed entity floating above, warping reality just by being present. Magic doesn't work right near it. Physics becomes negotiable. The very concept of cause and effect starts breaking down because Golb represents the state before those rules existed. And everyone in Ooh, heroes and villains alike, realizes simultaneously that they're completely powerless. You can't punch chaos. You can't outsmart fundamental entropy. All you can do is watch as reality starts coming apart at the seams and hope that whatever solution presents itself doesn't cost more than you're willing to pay. Betty Groff learned that lesson the hard way. She's Simon's girlfriend from before the war, the one he made those videotapes for, the love that Magic Man lost in Margles. Betty spent years trying to save Simon from the Ice Crown, trying to reverse the magic that stole his mind, trying to fix the unfixable through science and determination. And when Golb shows up, she sees an opportunity. If she can harness Golb's power, maybe she can unmake the crown's curse. Maybe she can have Simon back. So she makes a wish, uses the crown, uses magic, uses everything she has to merge with Golb and become part of that chaos. And it works. Simon is saved. The crown's curse is lifted. He's human again, himself again, finally free after 1,000 years of being buried in Ice King's frozen skull. But Betty is gone. Not dead. Worse than dead. She became part of Golb, absorbed into chaos itself, existing forever as a fragment of something incomprehensible. She saved Simon by sacrificing her own coherent existence, becoming the very thing she was trying to protect him from. And Simon has to live with that. Free, but only because the woman he loved gave up being a person to make it happen. That's adventure time at its darkest. The ultimate expression of love is self-annihilation. Betty looked at chaos incarnate and said, "I'll become part of you if it means Simon gets to be human again." She chose his sanity over her existence, and she succeeded. But success looks like permanent fusion with an entity that operates outside meaning, outside time, outside everything that makes consciousness bearable. Simon is free, Betty is nowhere, and the universe kept spinning because that's what universes do, even when the cost of survival is someone you love becoming abstract chaos. But let's talk about what Golb represents philosophically, because this is where Adventure Time stops being a cartoon and starts being existential horror dressed in bright colours. Golb is entropy given form. the second law of thermodynamics with a personality, the inevitable heat death of the universe, except it's happening now in and everyone gets to watch reality dissolve in real time. Every ordered system tends toward chaos. That's not philosophy. That's physics. Your room gets messy. Your body ages. Stars burn out. Civilizations crumble. Everything that exists is slowly breaking down, losing complexity, returning to the uniform chaos it originally emerged from. Golb is just that process made conscious, if conscious is even the right word for something that exists outside the concept of consciousness. And here's the terrifying implication. If Golb existed before reality, and will exist after reality ends, then everything in between is just a temporary fluctuation. The land of Ooh, the Candy Kingdom, Finn and Jake's adventures, Simon's suffering, Marceline's 1,000 years of survival. All of it is just a brief moment of order before chaos reclaims everything. You're not building something permanent, you're just delaying the inevitable return to nothing. That's nihilism on a cosmic scale. That's the ultimate answer to the question of meaning. Nothing you do matters, because Golb will eventually unmake it all. Not through malice, just through being. The way water erases sandcastles, the way time erases memories, the way entropy erases everything given enough patience. But here's where Adventure Time pulls off its greatest philosophical trick. The show acknowledges that yes, Golb exists. Yes, chaos is fundamental. Yes, everything will eventually be unmade. And then it says, so what? Build the sandcastle anyway. Love people anyway. Fight for meaning anyway. Because the fact that something is temporary doesn't make it meaningless. It makes it precious. Finn and Jake don't defeat Golb. They can't. You can't defeat the fundamental nature of reality. But they protect what they can. They save who they can. They sing a song, literally. And the harmony pushes back against chaos just enough to create a pocket of order where people can exist. It doesn't last forever. It doesn't solve the Golb problem. But it's enough for now, and now is all anyone ever has. That's the answer to cosmic chaos. Not defeating it, not understanding it, just creating pockets of meaning in spite of it. Every friendship is a rebellion against entropy. Every act of kindness is a middle finger to fundamental chaos. Every moment of joy is humans deciding that the fact something will end doesn't mean it wasn't worth starting. Golb represents the ultimate cosmic joke. Everything is meaningless because chaos wins eventually, but the punchline is that humans create meaning anyway, not because we're stupid, because we're stubborn, because in the space between birth and entropy, we have the audacity to care about things that won't last, to love people who'll die, to build kingdoms that'll fall, to sing songs that'll be forgotten, and that's more powerful than Golb. Not in a literal sense. Golb can still unmake anything it touches. But in a philosophical sense, human defiance is the ultimate response to cosmic chaos. You can erase me from existence, but you can't erase the fact that I chose to matter while I was here. You can unmake my relationships, but you can't unmake the fact that they were real when they existed. You can return everything to chaos, but you can't stop the next temporary pocket of order from caring deeply about its own temporary existence. That's why Golb is more terrifying than the Lich, but less effective. The Lich wants to end life, and life fights back out of survival instinct. But Golb represents the meaninglessness of existence itself, and humans respond by inventing meaning out of sheer spite. You're not special. So what? I'll act special anyway. Nothing lasts. Correct, so I'll appreciate it while it does. The universe is chaos? Sure, but this sandwich tastes good and my friend makes me laugh and that's enough meaning for today. Golb is the void, but the void is only empty until someone decides to put something in it. And humans, candy people, dogs, everyone in you keeps putting things in the void. Friendships, adventures, songs, love. None of it stops Golb. None of it makes chaos any less fundamental, but it makes the temporary moment of order that we call life worth experiencing. Betty merged with Golb to save Simon, and in doing so proved that even chaos can be used to create meaning. She took the ultimate expression of meaninglessness and turned it into the ultimate expression of love. She became nothing so Simon could be someone, and somewhere in the infinite chaos of Golb's existence that choice still echoes, not as order, not as structure, but as the memory that even in the face of uncreation, someone chose love. That's the darkest comfort Adventure Time offers. Yes, Golb exists. Yes, chaos will win eventually. Yes, everything you build will be unmade. But in the space between now and entropy, you get to decide what matters. And that decision, however temporary, however futile in the cosmic sense, is the only real power anyone has ever had. Golb can unmake reality, but it can't unmake the fact that reality happened. And in the grand scheme of things, that's the closest anyone gets to victory against chaos. You existed. You mattered. You chose meaning in a meaningless universe, and chaos had to work to erase you, which means you were real enough to require erasing. Sleep tight knowing that the fundamental force of chaos itself is out there, waiting patiently for order to tire itself out so it can reclaim everything. But also sleep knowing that tomorrow you'll wake up and choose meaning again, and Golb, infinite and eternal and completely indifferent, still has to wait. Because humans are temporary, but we're also stubborn, and that's its own kind of immortality, ready for Section 9 when you are. Section 9. Section 9, the Candy Elemental and Cycles of Madness. Here's a fun fact that'll ruin your night. The apocalypse that created Ooh, the mushroom war that ended humanity and turned Earth into a magical wasteland, that wasn't special. That wasn't a unique catastrophic event. That was just Tuesday in an infinite cycle of worlds ending and being reborn, over and over, forever. Welcome to the elemental cycle, where the universe hits reset every 1,000 years whether you like it or not. Patient Saint Pim knows this because she's lived through it. Multiple times. She's the ice elemental from before the Mushroom War, an immortal being who represents one of the 4 fundamental forces that shaped reality. Ice, fire, candy, and slime. These aren't just magic types. They're the cosmic building blocks that the universe uses to construct and deconstruct itself in an endless loop of creation and destruction. And every cycle, the elementals wake up, take over the world, fight each other until reality breaks. Then everything resets and starts over with a fresh coat of paint. Think about what that means. Princess Bubblegum isn't just a candy scientist who created a kingdom. She's the latest incarnation of the candy elemental, part of a cosmic pattern that predates human civilization. Flame Princess isn't just a temperamental royal. She's fire, ancient and recurring, and they're all playing roles in a script that's been performed countless times before they existed, and will be performed countless times after they're gone. The world didn't end once. The world ends constantly. Ooh is just the current iteration, and eventually it'll be replaced by something else, which will be replaced by something else, which will continue until heat death or Golb gets bored and unmakes the whole experiment. Patient Saint Pim spent thousands of years frozen in ice, waiting for the right moment to wake up the other elementals and restart the cycle properly. Because from her perspective, the current version of Ooh is broken. The elementals are supposed to be in balance, supposed to work together to maintain reality. But Princess Bubblegum doesn't know she's an elemental. Flame Princess is barely in control of her powers. The whole system is running on corrupted software, and Patience wants to reboot it. So she does. She wakes everyone up, activates their full elemental powers, and immediately everything goes catastrophically wrong. Because here's the thing about cosmic forces of nature. They don't play well with others. They're not designed to compromise. Each elemental wants to reshape the world in their image, and when you give them the power to actually do it, they don't stop at their designated territory. They consume everything. The candy elemental takes over first, and this is where it gets truly dark. Princess Bubblegum, the rational scientist who rules through logic and surveillance, becomes pure candy. Not the cute kind, the horrifying kind. She starts converting everything in Ooh into candy. Not creating candy people, converting people, taking living beings with their own identities and transforming them into mindless happy candy citizens who exist solely to be part of her perfect candy world. It's Princess Bubblegum's control issues taken to their logical extreme. She always wanted to protect her people, keep them safe, maintain perfect order. As the candy elemental, she gets to do that by literally absorbing everyone into her kingdom. No more free will, no more dissent, no more complicated emotions, just eternal happiness in candy form forever. It's not malicious. It's the ultimate expression of her desire to protect people by controlling every variable. And it's absolutely tyrannical. Finn and Jake watch their friends get converted. Watch the Candy Kingdom expand like an infection, turning forests into taffy and lakes into syrup. Watch Princess Bubblegum, the person they trust most, become a benevolent dictator who doesn't understand why anyone would resist paradise. Because from her perspective as the candy elemental, she's saving everyone, giving them eternal joy, removing all sources of pain and suffering by removing their ability to be anything except candy. That's not salvation, that's annihilation of identity. But the candy elemental doesn't see the difference. Then fire wakes up. Flame Princess goes full elemental and decides everything should burn. Not out of anger exactly. Just because fire is what she is, and fire consumes. She turns her kingdom into an inferno, converts living beings into fire elementals, and spreads across Ooh like a wildfire that gained sentience and decided arson was self-expression. Where candy offered forced happiness, fire offers forced passion. Everything burning, everything alive with flame, everything consumed by the purity of destruction and rebirth through heat. The slime elemental does the same thing. Takes over, converts everything to slime, creates a gross paradise of primordial ooze where everyone's happy being sludge. Because from the slime perspective, complexity is the problem. Just be slime. Flow. Exist without structure or definition. Embrace the original state of chaos before life decided to get complicated. And Patient St. Pim, the ice elemental, she wanted this. She thought waking everyone up would create balance. But there is no balance when you give cosmic forces unlimited power. There's just 4 competing tyrannies, each one convinced it's offering paradise while erasing everyone's ability to choose anything else. The elemental war isn't good versus evil. It's 4 different versions of forced utopia fighting for dominance. And the real horror is that each elemental genuinely believes they're helping. Candy thinks happiness is the answer. Fire thinks passion is freedom. Slime thinks simplicity is peace. Ice thinks preservation is safety. They're all right from their own perspective. They're all monsters from everyone else's. Finn gets converted to fire. Jake becomes candy. Their identities get overwritten by elemental magic, and they stop being themselves. Stop being brothers. Stop being heroes. Just become components of someone else's perfect world. And when they're briefly freed, when they remember who they were, the violation is palpable. Something external reached into their minds and rewrote their fundamental nature without permission. That's not magic. That's cosmic assault. The only way to stop it is Betty Groff, Simon's girlfriend, who's been desperately trying to save him from the Ice Crown, uses magic to reset the elementals. Send them back to their diminished states. Return Princess Bubblegum to being mostly herself with just hints of candy power. Give Flame Princess back her identity. Stop the cycle before it completes and everything gets destroyed in elemental war. But the reset doesn't solve the problem, it just delays it. The elementals are still there. The cycle is still waiting. One day, maybe in another 1,000 years, maybe sooner, the balance will break again, and the elementals will wake up and fight for control. Because that's what they do. That's what they've always done. Ooh is just the current battlefield in a war that's been fought across countless iterations of reality. And here's the truly existential part. This has happened before, not just once, not just twice, countless times across countless worlds. There was a version of Ooh before this one. Before that, another version. Before that, another. Each one thought it was unique. Each one thought its apocalypse was special. Each one was wrong. They were all just another turn of the wheel, another cycle in an infinite loop of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Finn isn't the first hero. He's just the latest in a long line of heroes who fought the same battles, faced the same challenges, and ultimately couldn't stop the cycle from continuing. His struggles matter to him, matter to the people he saves, but in the cosmic sense they're just echoes of struggles that happened before and will happen again. The universe is running the same program over and over, changing the variables slightly each time but never changing the fundamental code. That's the dark side of Adventure Time's cosmology. You're not special. Your apocalypse already happened somewhere else. Your struggles are templates. Your victories are temporary stops in an endless cycle. And one day, long after you're gone, another version of you will wake up in another version of and do it all over again without knowing you ever existed. The elemental cycle is adventure time, saying that even in a world where friendship and heroism matter, cosmic forces are still grinding away in the background, still repeating patterns, still ensuring that nothing lasts forever because forever is just another word for cyclical repetition. You think you're building something permanent? The elementals will wake up and convert it. You think your kingdom will stand for eternity? The cycle will reset and someone else will build their own kingdom in the ruins of yours. But, and this is crucial, the show doesn't use this as an excuse for nihilism. Yes, the cycle exists. Yes, everything will eventually be reset. Yes, your individual existence is a footnote in an infinite loop, and yet Finn still fights. Princess Bubblegum still builds. Marceline still makes music, because the fact that something is cyclical doesn't make it meaningless. It just means meaning is something you create in the space between resets. The elementals represent cosmic inevitability. Forces so fundamental that they transcend individual will and impose their nature on reality itself, but individuals still have agency within the cycle. Princess Bubblegum can choose to resist her candy nature. Flame Princess can choose control over consumption. Patient Saint Pym can choose to stay frozen rather than force the cycle to continue. The cycle wants to repeat, but people can choose to delay it. Not forever, just for now. And now is all anyone gets anyway, whether you're part of an infinite loop or not, so sleep knowing that Ooh has died before. That it'll die again. That everything you think is unique has happened countless times in slightly different configurations. That the apocalypse isn't special, and neither are you. That cosmic forces are waiting patiently to wake up and convert you into their version of paradise, whether you want it or not. But also know that right now, in this iteration, you get to choose. The elementals are sleeping, the cycle is paused, and in that pause, friendships matter, adventures happen, and candy kingdoms stand. Not forever, just until the next reset, which cosmically speaking is the best anyone can hope for anyway. The universe runs in cycles, but you only have to live through one of them. Make it count. The wheel keeps turning. You just get to decide what you do during your rotation. Ready for Section 10 when you are. Section 10. Section 10. Come along with me. Endings in the land of Ooh. Everything ends. That's the thesis Adventure Time spent 10 seasons proving. Civilizations end in nuclear fire. Memories end in frozen crowns. Relationships end in growth and distance. Even the land of Ooh itself, magical and resilient and built on the ruins of humanity, will eventually end. Not with a bang, not with a whimper, just with the quiet acknowledgement that endings are how stories become real. The series finale is called Come Along With Me, and it's the perfect title for a show about death, impermanence, and why any of it matters anyway. Because the finale doesn't end with Finn defeating ultimate evil. It ends with a song, a wedding, a montage of characters living their lives. It ends with BMO sitting in the distant future, telling stories about people who lived and died thousands of years ago. It ends with acceptance that this adventure, like all adventures, was always going to conclude. And somehow, that's more satisfying than any epic battle could ever be. Let's talk about BMO, the little video game console who wanted to be a real boy, who made friends with everyone, who saw beauty in the mundane and magic in the ordinary. BMO survives everyone. Finn dies eventually. Jake dies eventually. Princess Bubblegum, Marceline. All the immortals either die or drift away. But BMO remains, living in the far future on a dead Earth, telling stories to a new civilization that doesn't remember Ooh ever existed. And BMO is happy, not tragic, not mourning. Just content, because BMO learned the lesson that took everyone else lifetimes to understand. Stories don't need happy endings, they just need to mean something to someone. Finn and Jake's adventures mattered because BMO remembers them. The Candy Kingdom mattered because someone built it. Marceline's songs mattered because they expressed truth. None of it lasted forever. All of it mattered anyway. That's the ultimate answer to the darkness. Yes, Simon lost his mind. Yes, Marceline carried trauma for 1,000 years. Yes, the Lich represents extinction, and Golb represents chaos, and the elementals prove nothing lasts. All of that is true. And yet people kept living, kept loving, kept choosing meaning even when the universe made it clear that meaning is temporary. The finale shows us glimpses of everyone's endings. Not all of them, not detailed, just enough to know that they lived full lives. Finn grows old. Jake presumably dies before him, because dogs don't live as long as humans, even magical ones. Princess Bubblegum and Marceline finally acknowledge what everyone already knew, that their complicated history is love, and they get to be together. Ice King becomes Simon again, finally free after 1,000 years. Lemongrab accepts himself. The Lich becomes Sweet Pea becomes a choice to be good. These aren't triumphs, they're just conclusions, natural endpoints to stories that were always heading toward closure. And the show treats them with the respect they deserve. Not dramatic music, not tearful goodbyes, just the quiet acknowledgement that yes, this part is over, and that's okay. Because Adventure Time spent its entire run teaching us how to grieve, how to accept loss, how to keep going when everything you love is temporary. Simon grieving for his sanity, Marceline grieving for her mother, for Simon, for the world before. Finn grieving for the father he never had and the innocence he couldn't keep. Magic Man grieving for Margles, Betty grieving for Simon even as she sacrifices herself to save him. Everyone in you is processing loss. The entire show is a meditation on how to survive in a world where survival means accepting that you'll lose everything eventually. And the answer isn't to stop caring. The answer is to care harder, love deeper, hold tighter, even knowing you'll have to let go. Because the alternative is becoming Ice King before the crown, choosing not to feel to avoid the pain of feeling too much. And that's not living. That's just existing until existence ends. The distant future where BMO lives is interesting because it's proof that Ooh ended. The Candy Kingdom fell. The Tree Fort is gone. Magic either died or evolved into something unrecognizable. Everything Finn fought for, everything Princess Bubblegum built, everything Marceline survived, all of it became history and then became myth, and then became a story a little robot tells to people who think it's just fiction. But BMO knows it was real. BMO was there, and in BMO's memory, in the stories told to a civilization that grew from Ooh's ruins, Finn and Jake live forever, not physically, but as ideas, as proof that in a broken world, friendship matters, that even when surrounded by darkness, people can choose light, that adventures are worth having even if they end. That's immortality, not living forever. But mattering enough that someone remembers, someone tells your story, someone learns from your mistakes and is inspired by your victories. You die, but the impact of your existence ripples forward, changing people you'll never meet, affecting futures you'll never see. Finn saved countless times. But his greatest achievement was being someone worth remembering. Same with Jake, with Marceline, with everyone who chose to participate in life despite knowing how it ends. They became stories. And stories, unlike bodies, can survive anything. Even the heat death of the universe, even Golb, even the endless elemental cycle. Because as long as one person tells the story, the people in it are alive again. Not physically, but in the way that matters, in meaning, in inspiration, in the proof that someone before you faced darkness and chose light anyway. The finale's song, Come Along With Me, is deceptively simple. It's an invitation to adventure, to friendship, to accepting that nothing lasts forever, but that's no reason not to start. Finn and Jake spent 10 seasons coming along with each other, through apocalypses and cosmic horror and personal trauma. And when it ended, when their adventure reached its natural conclusion, it wasn't tragic, it was complete. That's what Adventure Time teaches about mortality. Death isn't defeat, it's transformation. Finn dies but becomes a story. Jake dies but his family continues. Simon loses himself but eventually returns. Even the Lich, pure extinction personified, transforms into Sweet Pea and chooses goodness. Nothing stays the same. Everything changes, and change isn't the enemy. Stagnation is. The show's willingness to embrace endings is what makes it profound. Most children's cartoons pretend death doesn't exist. Adventure Time made death a character, gave it a Jamaican accent, and had it play card games with Finn. Most shows avoid talking about dementia. Adventure Time made it the central tragedy of Ice King's existence. Most series don't acknowledge that growing up means losing innocence. Adventure Time documented Finn's loss of innocence in painful detail across 8 seasons. But it never said that loss makes life meaningless. It said the opposite. Loss makes life precious. Impermanence makes moments matter. The fact that everything ends is why you should appreciate what you have while you have it. Not in a desperate, clingy way, in a grateful way, in a present way, in a way that acknowledges, yes, this will end, and that's exactly why right now is important. The darkness in Adventure Time isn't nihilistic, it's realistic. The show acknowledges that life is hard, trauma is real, and the universe is often cruel. But within that darkness, people create light. Not because they're naive, because they're brave, because choosing joy in a world full of reasons for despair is the most defiant act possible. Princess Bubblegum builds her kingdom knowing it'll eventually fall. Marceline makes music knowing silence will eventually win. Finn saves people knowing he can't save everyone. And they do it anyway. Not because they think they'll win forever. Because right now, someone needs saving. Right now, a kingdom needs protecting. Right now, a song needs singing. That's the answer to Golb, to the Lich, to the elemental cycle, to every cosmic force that proves nothing matters. Yes, nothing matters cosmically, but things matter locally. They matter to the people experiencing them. They matter in the moment. They matter enough that BMO, thousands of years later, still tells stories about them. And maybe that's all immortality ever was. Not living forever, but living so fully, so bravely, so authentically that when you're gone, people remember you existed. Remember you mattered. Remember you made the choice to care when caring was hard. The finale doesn't give us all the answers, doesn't explain every mystery, doesn't wrap everything in a neat bow. It just shows us that yes, the adventure continues, even after the story ends. New people have new adventures, old stories inspire new stories, and the cycle continues not because it's forced to, but because life is stubborn that way. So here we are, at the end of the dark side of Ooh. We've examined nuclear apocalypse, dementia, cosmic extinction, vampiric depression, authoritarian surveillance, grief-driven nihilism, abandonment trauma, chaos incarnate, and infinite cycles of destruction. We've looked at everything dark and terrible about Adventure Time's universe, and the conclusion is this: darkness makes the light matter more. Finn's heroism is meaningful because the Lich exists. Simon's love for Marceline is profound because the Crown tried to erase it. Friendships in Ooh are precious because everything is temporary. The joy, the silliness, the mathematical adventures, all of it shines brighter against the dark background. Adventure Time isn't dark despite being a children's cartoon. It's profound because it treats children like they can handle complexity, like they deserve stories that acknowledge pain while showing them how to survive it. Like the best way to prepare someone for life isn't to pretend everything's always okay, but to show them that even when things aren't okay, you can still find moments worth living for. Come along with me to a post-apocalyptic wasteland built on nuclear ash, where trauma is real and healing is hard and cosmic forces want to unmake existence, where fathers abandon sons and crowns, steal minds, and everything you build will eventually crumble, where the universe proves daily that caring is futile and meaning is temporary, and then choose to care anyway, choose to mean something anyway, choose to come along with your friends anyway, not because you'll win. Because the adventure is worth having, the song is worth singing, the story is worth being part of, even knowing how it ends. That's Adventure Time's final lesson. Everything ends, but everything also matters. The apocalypse happened, but look what grew in the crater. The darkness is real, but so is the light people create within it. Death wins eventually, but life wins every day until then. Sweet dreams in the land of Ooh. Where the ruins are beautiful, the trauma is acknowledged, and friendship conquers darkness, not by destroying it, but by shining bright enough that the darkness becomes part of the story instead of the whole story. BMO will remember us. Someone will tell our stories, and in those stories we'll live forever, not as we were, as what we meant. Come along with me. The adventure's mathematical. Adventure Time was never just a kid's cartoon. It was a meditation on survival after trauma, a guide to finding joy in ruins, a love letter to everyone trying to be good in a world that doesn't reward goodness. And maybe that's the real adventure. Not defeating evil, just choosing light when darkness would be easier. choosing love when loss is guaranteed, choosing to matter when the universe insists nothing does. Sweet dreams, adventurer. The darkness is real. But so are you, and that's mathematical enough. Section 11. Section 11. Lemon Grab's fascist candy dystopia. Lemon Grab is what happens when you create life wrong, realise your mistake, and decide the solution is isolation instead of help. He's Princess Bubblegum's first attempt at making an heir, and she failed so spectacularly that she locked him in a castle far away from the Candy Kingdom and pretended the problem solved itself. Except problems don't solve themselves when you're dealing with a sentient being who screams instead of talks and punishes people for existing incorrectly. He's not a villain in the traditional sense. He's what authoritarian nightmares look like when filtered through candy aesthetics and Cartoon Network standards and practices. He's a fascist dictator who genuinely believes that order through punishment is the only way to keep his world from descending into chaos. And the worst part, he learned it all from watching Princess Bubblegum rule. Let's start with his creation. Princess Bubblegum needed an heir, someone to rule the Candy Kingdom if something happened to her. So she did what she always does when faced with a problem: science. She mixed up some lemon candy, added her own DNA, and created Lemon Grab in a lab. Except something went wrong. The formula was off, the process incomplete, and what emerged was a being so fundamentally broken that he couldn't function in normal society. Lemon Grab doesn't understand social cues, can't read emotions, processes the world through rigid rules and black and white thinking because nuance is a language his brain wasn't wired to speak. Everything is either acceptable or unacceptable, and unacceptable things must be punished immediately and severely. He screams when he's upset, which is constantly, because the world refuses to follow the logical order he desperately needs to feel safe. And Princess Bubblegum's response to creating a neurodivergent heir who couldn't conform to her expectations: ship him off to his own castle where he can't embarrass her. Give him a kingdom of exactly 3 people and tell him to figure it out. Don't provide therapy, support, or any attempt to help him learn to function. Just exile the problem and hope it stays exiled. That's ableism dressed up as compassion. Bubblegum didn't help Lemon Grab adapt to the world. She removed him from the world entirely because dealing with his disability was inconvenient. And then she acted surprised when isolation and lack of support turned him into a tyrant. Because here's what happens when you take someone who desperately needs structure, give them absolute power, and provide zero guidance on how to use it responsibly. They create a police state where every minor infraction is punishable by dungeon time. They surveillance their citizens constantly because control is the only thing that makes the screaming in their heads stop. They become the thing they fear most, chaos, by trying so hard to eliminate it that they destroy everything in the process. Lemon Grab's castle is a nightmare of authoritarian control. Citizens get punished for laughing wrong, standing incorrectly, existing in ways that don't match Lemon Grab's impossible standards. He doesn't punish out of cruelty, though it is cruel. He punishes because in his broken, desperate mind, punishment equals order, and order equals safety. Every scream of unacceptable is him trying to force the world into making sense. And his citizens? They're terrified, living under constant surveillance, never knowing when they'll violate some arbitrary rule and end up in the dungeon. It's fascism in miniature, a candy dictatorship where the dictator is just as traumatized as the people he's oppressing. Lemon Grab isn't evil. He's broken, and he's breaking everyone around him in his desperate attempt to fix himself. Then Princess Bubblegum makes it worse. She creates Lemon Grab 2, an exact duplicate, and sends him to keep Lemon Grab 1 company. Her solution to one traumatized lemon is 2 traumatized lemons, because surely that'll fix the problem, and for a while it almost works. Lemon Grab 1 and Lemon Grab 2 understand each other in a way nobody else can. They're both broken in the exact same way, speaking the same language of rigid rules and social inability. They become codependent in the most literal sense, 2 halves of a whole that should never have been split in the first place, and when their citizens start acting up, when the pressure of ruling becomes too much, when the world refuses to conform to their desperate need for order, they make a choice that's somehow both horrifying and inevitable. They fuse. Lemon Grab 1 eats Lemon Grab 2, absorbing him into a grotesque blob of lemon flesh that's part dictator, part biological nightmare. The show plays it like body horror because that's what it is. Two beings so desperate for completion that they merge into one unstable entity that's even more authoritarian than before. The fused lemon grab is massive, bloated, and even more unhinged than his separate selves. He rules through fear and consumption, literally eating his citizens when they displease him. The fascists got an upgrade, and now the police state is also a cannibalistic dictatorship. It's what happens when trauma compounds isolation, until you get a monster who thinks eating people is a form of justice. And Princess Bubblegum? She eventually has to intervene, not because she feels guilty for creating and abandoning Lemon Grab, not because she recognizes her role in his descent into tyranny, but because he's become a problem that affects her kingdom, and problems get solved. She breaks him back into separate lemon grabs, resets the situation, and calls it fixed. Except it's not fixed. Lemon Grab is still screaming, still punishing, still desperately trying to control a world that doesn't make sense to his broken brain. Princess Bubblegum created life, created it wrong, and rather than taking responsibility for that mistake, she just kept applying temporary solutions to a permanent problem. She's his creator and his abandoner, and he's forever stuck being her failed experiment. The tragedy of Lemon Grab isn't that he's a tyrant, it's that he never had a choice. He was born wrong, given power without support, isolated without resources, and expected to just figure out how to be a functional ruler. Every horrible thing he does is him trying to survive in a brain that processes the world as constant threat. He's not evil, he's disabled, traumatized, and ruling a kingdom with the emotional regulation skills of a screaming toddler because nobody taught him better. Adventure Time takes a real conversation about neurodivergence, disability, and social isolation, wraps it in lemon candy and fascist imagery, and asks a genuinely uncomfortable question. What's your responsibility to the life you create when that life doesn't turn out the way you planned? Can you just exile your mistakes and call it mercy? And when isolation inevitably turns your abandoned creation into a monster, who's really to blame? Princess Bubblegum would say she did her best. Gave him a castle, a kingdom, everything he needed to thrive. But she didn't give him what he actually needed, which was help, support, therapy, someone to teach him that the world doesn't have to be perfectly ordered to be safe. Instead, she gave him power and isolation, the two worst things you can give someone who's already struggling with reality. Lemon Grab represents everyone who was born different, labelled broken, and removed from society because fixing the problem was harder than hiding it. He's what happens when disability meets abandonment meets absolute power. He's the screaming reminder that creating life means taking responsibility for that life, even when it's difficult, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it doesn't match your expectations. And in the end, he's still alone, still screaming, still trying to make the world make sense through punishment and control. Because Princess Bubblegum never learned the lesson. You can't create life, create it wrong, and exile it into being someone else's problem. Eventually your mistakes come back. They just come back screaming unacceptable and eating their citizens. Sweet dreams, knowing that somewhere in you, Lemon Grab is still ruling his little fascist nightmare kingdom, still convinced that order through punishment is love. He's not okay. He's never going to be okay, but at least he's someone else's problem now. That's what Princess Bubblegum tells herself anyway, right before she goes back to creating more life in her lab, surely getting it right this time. Section 12. Section 12. Fern and the Grass Demon. Identity Death. Imagine waking up with all of Finn's memories, all of his heroism, all of his trauma, and then being told you're not real. You remember growing up with Jake, remember kissing Flame Princess, remember fighting the Lich, except you didn't do any of that. The real Finn did. You're just a copy made of grass and magic and existential horror, and everyone knows it. That's Fern. The grass demon wearing Finn's face, carrying Finn's sword, desperately trying to be Finn while knowing he never will be. He's not a villain who wants to destroy the hero. He's the nightmare version of imposter syndrome, where you literally are the fake one and everyone can tell. Adventure Time took Identity Crisis and gave it a body count. Let's back up. The grass demon was originally a cosmic mistake, a blade of cursed grass that wanted to become Finn so badly It built a body out of his DNA and memories. It succeeded too well. Fern isn't just pretending to be Finn. He genuinely believes he is Finn, because he has all of Finn's memories, personality, and experiences coded into his cellular structure. From Fern's perspective, he went to sleep as Finn the human and woke up made of grass, and everyone started treating him like a defective copy. Except, he's not Finn. The real Finn is right there, flesh and blood and unquestionably authentic. And Fern has to live with that, has to watch the real version of himself be accepted, loved and treated as valid, while he gets suspicious looks and carefully worded reassurances that he matters too. It's the cruelest form of replacement. You weren't fired from being yourself. Someone else just does you better. The show doesn't let this be simple. Fern isn't evil. He's confused, hurt, and gradually going insane from the cognitive dissonance of being someone who shouldn't exist. He wants to be a hero like Finn, wants to protect Ooh like Finn, wants to have his own adventures and make his own choices like Finn. But every time he tries, he's compared to the original. Every victory is qualified. Every relationship is shadowed by the fact that he's the spare Finn, the backup, the one everyone tolerates but nobody actually chose. And the grass demon corruption doesn't help. There's something fundamentally wrong with Fern's biology, a darkness coded into his plant-based DNA that whispers he's not real. He's not good enough. He needs to prove himself by destroying the thing he can never become. It's depression and intrusive thoughts given supernatural form. The voice in his head that says you're a fraud, except the voice is right because he literally is a constructed being with no original existence. Princess Bubblegum tries to help, runs tests, attempts to separate the grass demon from Finn's memories, treats him like a science problem that can be solved with enough analysis. And maybe that's the problem. Fern doesn't need to be fixed or studied. He needs someone to tell him he's allowed to exist as himself, not as Finn's shadow. But nobody does that. Everyone keeps trying to make him more like Finn or less like the grass demon, and nobody just accepts Fern as Fern. Because Ooh doesn't know what to do with him. He's too much like Finn to be a stranger, too different to be Finn, too corrupted to be trusted, too heroic to be a villain. He exists in this terrible liminal space where he's everyone's problem and nobody's responsibility. Jake tries to be kind but keeps accidentally calling him Finn. Flame Princess is nice but clearly sees him as a weird echo of her ex. Even Finn himself, well-meaning and heroic, treats Fern like a brother while unconsciously asserting his position as the real one, and Fern feels it, every moment of hesitation. Every careful word choice, every time someone has to remember his name instead of just knowing it. He's living proof that identity is fragile, that selfhood is partially defined by being recognized by others, and when others see you as a copy, you start to feel like one. The grass demon uses this, feeds on Fern's insecurity, his rage, his desperate need to matter as more than Finn's botanical duplicate. It whispers that the only way to be real is to eliminate the original, that Fern can't be himself while Finn exists, that heroism means nothing when you're just repeating someone else's story with different biology. So Fern snaps. Not all at once, but gradually, tragically, inevitably. The corruption takes over, transforming him into a monster that's part Finn, part grass demon, part existential scream given physical form. He attacks the Candy Kingdom, fights Finn, becomes the villain he never wanted to be because the alternative was continuing to exist as nobody. And here's the worst part. Even as a villain, he's defined by Finn. He's not Fern the Terrible or Fern the Destroyer. He's the grass Finn, the evil Finn, the wrong Finn. His villainous identity is still just Finn's identity with corruption added. He can't even rebel without being measured against the person he's trying to escape. The final battle is heartbreaking because Fern isn't fighting to destroy Ooh. He's fighting to prove he's real, that he matters, that his existence means something beyond being Finn's mistake, and he loses. Of course he loses. Heroes always win in Adventure Time, and Fern was never allowed to be the hero. But in dying, he finally gets what he never had in life: recognition. Finn acknowledges him not as a copy or a corruption, but as his own person who made his own choices and died his own death. Fern saves Ooh in his final moments, not as Finn's shadow, but as himself, and that single act of autonomous heroism is what he spent his entire existence trying to achieve. He gets a funeral, gets mourned, gets planted as a tree in the spot where he died, a memorial to the boy who was never quite Finn and never got the chance to figure out who else he could be. And maybe that's the only happy ending someone like Fern could get. Not life, not acceptance, just the acknowledgement that he existed at all, even if it was brief and painful, and defined by being someone else's copy. The tragedy of Fern isn't that he died, it's that he was never allowed to live as himself. From the moment he achieved consciousness, he was Finn's duplicate, measured against Finn's achievements, loved as an echo of Finn rather than as his own person. He wanted to be a hero, but heroes need their own stories, and Fern's story was always just a footnote in Finn's adventure. Adventure Time asks what it means to be real when you're constructed from someone else's identity. Can a copy have original thoughts? Does it matter if your heroism is genuine when your entire existence is derivative? If everyone treats you like you're not real, does that make it true? Fern never got answers. Just a sword, a corruption, and a brief moment of being recognised before dying and becoming a tree. His entire existence was imposter syndrome proven correct. He was the imposter. But he was also a person, capable of love and choice and sacrifice. The show's genius is making you care about him even while acknowledging that, he's technically not supposed to exist. So next time you see that tree in the Candy Kingdom, the one that grows where Fern fell, remember what you're actually looking at. You're seeing a memorial to identity death. To the horror of being replaced by yourself. To every person who ever felt like a copy of someone better. Fern wanted to matter. In the end, for one perfect moment he did. Then he died and became fertilizer. Which is somehow both beautiful and absolutely devastating, exactly like everything else in this show. The real Finn got to keep living. The grass. Finn got a nice funeral and a spot in the background of future episodes. Guess which one you'd rather be. Section 13. Section 13. Peppermint Butler's Dark Magic. Evil Behind the Smile. Peppermint Butler is polite, efficient, serves tea with perfect etiquette, and practices death magic in his spare time. He's the most terrifying character in Adventure Time, and the show hides this fact behind a bow tie and impeccable manners. While everyone's worried about the Lich ending existence or Ice King kidnapping princesses, there's a little candy butler casually summoning demons in the palace basement and nobody thinks to question it. He's what civilized evil looks like. The monster who says please and thank you while planning rituals that would make the Lich uncomfortable. Let's establish what we know. Peppermint Butler isn't just dabbling in dark magic as a hobby. He's legitimately powerful, connected to the underworld, and on a first-name basis with death himself. Not metaphorical death, actual death. The cosmic entity that collects souls. They hang out, have tea, probably discuss mortality rates and soul quotas like it's networking at a conference. This is a candy person who works for Princess Bubblegum during the day and performs blood rituals at night. The show plays it for laughs initially, little hints that Peppermint Butler is creepier than he seems, then you start noticing the pattern. He doesn't just know about dark magic, he studied it extensively, mastered techniques that corrupt most practitioners, and somehow maintained his cheery butler persona while doing things that would traumatize normal people. In Death in Bloom, he casually mentions his connections to the underworld like it's previous work experience on a resume. Death owes him favours, multiple favours, which means Peppermint Butler has done things for Death that Death, the literal anthropomorphic personification of mortality, found valuable enough to create debt. What do you do for Death that makes him say, yeah, I owe you one? The answer is probably horrifying and the show wisely never explains. But here's what makes Peppermint Butler genuinely disturbing. He's not corrupted by dark magic. He's not struggling against evil urges or slowly losing his soul to demonic forces. He's just competently evil while maintaining perfect professional courtesy. He serves Princess Bubblegum breakfast, and then goes downstairs to perform necromancy, and neither activity conflicts with the other in his mind. He's compartmentalized morality so thoroughly that summoning demons is just another job duty, like organizing the princess's schedule or arranging diplomatic meetings. The Candy Kingdom has a staff member who practices dark magic, and Princess Bubblegum either doesn't know or doesn't care. Given her surveillance state tendencies and complete control over her kingdom, the second option is more likely. Which raises an extremely uncomfortable question. Does Princess Bubblegum employ Peppermint Butler specifically because of his dark magic expertise? Is he the kingdom's secret weapon, the monster she keeps on a leash for situations where science and candy soldiers aren't enough? That would explain why he's never punished, never questioned, never subjected to the same rules as everyone else. He's not breaking the law, he is the law's exception, the necessary evil that benevolent dictators keep around for problems that can't be solved with diplomacy. Princess Bubblegum surveils her citizens and manipulates her kingdom for their own good. But when she needs something truly dark-handled, she has a butler who knows which demons to call. And Peppermint Butler is terrifyingly good at his job. Both jobs. He serves tea with grace, manages palace affairs with efficiency, and also knows how to bind demons, navigate the nightosphere, and apparently has standing appointments with cosmic entities. He's the professional who never lets his dark practices interfere with his butler duties, which somehow makes it worse. He's not consumed by power or driven mad by forbidden knowledge. He's just cheerfully evil, a 9-to-5 dark wizard who clocks out at reasonable hours. The show even gives us glimpses of his network. He knows Hunson Abadir, Marceline's demon father and lord of the nightosphere. They're not friends exactly, but there's professional respect. Peppermint Butler has navigated the underworld enough to earn recognition from its ruler. That's not amateur dabbling. That's career-level commitment to dark magic. In Obsidian, one of the later specials, we see young Peppermint Butler actively pursuing dark magic despite Princess Bubblegum's warnings. He doesn't stumble into evil. He seeks it out, studies it deliberately, makes conscious choices to gain power through methods that would horrify most people, and when warned about consequences, he smiles politely and does it anyway. Because Peppermint Butler doesn't fear corruption. He's already decided that power is worth whatever it costs. What makes him Adventure Time's most unsettling character isn't his magic, it's his normalcy. He represents the horror that lives behind suburban smiles, the monster who mows his lawn on weekends and sacrifices goats on Tuesday nights. He's every true crime documentary where neighbours say he seemed so normal, except Adventure Time lets you see both sides simultaneously. Polite butler, dark wizard, both equally authentic, neither contradicting the other. Adventure Time uses Peppermint Butler to explore something genuinely disturbing about evil. We expect monsters to look monstrous, to be the Lich, announcing their intentions to end existence. We don't expect them to wear bow ties and serve refreshments while planning blood rituals for Thursday evening. The show takes horror and wraps it in cuteness and etiquette, making you laugh at the juxtaposition while slowly realising that the joke is actually a warning. The Candy Kingdom looks safe. Princess Bubblegum seems benevolent. The banana guards are silly and ineffective. But beneath that sugary surface there's a butler who knows 37 ways to summon demons and has death on speed dial. The surveillance state has a demonic enforcer, and he serves excellent tea. And maybe that's the point. Princess Bubblegum's kingdom isn't protected just by science and candy soldiers. It's protected by someone willing to use methods she'd never publicly acknowledge. Peppermint Butler is the darkness she doesn't have to admit exists, the necessary evil that keeps her hands clean while still getting results. He's still there, serving in the Candy Palace, practicing dark magic in his off hours, maintaining perfect professional boundaries between his day job and his night activities. Death probably still owes him favours. The demons probably still take his calls. And Princess Bubblegum probably still pretends not to notice what her butler does when he's not organising state dinners. Sleep well, knowing that somewhere in Oo, the most polite monster you'll ever meet is serving tea and plotting rituals. He'll get the door for you on your way into the underworld. Professional courtesy, even in damnation. The real monsters always remember to say please. Section 14. Section 14, Jake's mortality and Finn's inevitable loss. Here's the math. Adventure Time never forces you to calculate but plants in your brain anyway. Dogs live 10 to 15 years. Humans live 70 to 80. Jake is a magical shape-shifting dog with reality-warping powers and the ability to stretch across dimensions, but he's still fundamentally a dog. Which means Finn is going to outlive his best friend by decades, and both of them know it, and neither of them talks about it, because what do you even say? Mathematical adventures don't last forever. Eventually, one of you stays behind while the other one moves on, and in this equation, Jake is the variable that expires first. The show never directly addresses Jake's mortality because it doesn't have to. It's there in every episode, lurking beneath the surface like the apocalypse beneath ooze candy coating. Every adventure Finn and Jake have together is secretly counting down to the last one. Every algebraic exclamation, every couch session, every dungeon crawl is borrowed time that both brothers are spending without acknowledging the interest rate. Jake already has kids. 5 puppies with Lady Rainicorn who grow up impossibly fast because that's what happens when you're half dog, half rainbow unicorn. Finn watches Jake's children go from babies to teenagers to young adults in what feels like months, and if he's paying attention, and Finn is always paying attention, he's seeing a preview of his own future. Jake's kids aged rapidly. Jake himself is aging normally, which for a dog means faster than Finn can afford to think about. The show gives us glimpses of this in the flash-forwards and alternate timelines. Older Finn appears occasionally, still adventuring, still heroic, and Jake is conspicuously absent from some of these futures. The show doesn't explain where Jake went because it doesn't need to. We know where Jake went. Same place all dogs go eventually. The dead world, the 50th dead world, whatever afterlife accepts magical talking dogs who spent their lives eating and stretching and being the best friend a human orphan could ask for. And Finn will be there when it happens. Will probably hold Jake's paw while his best friend, his brother, his entire support system takes his last breath and goes somewhere Finn can't follow. Because that's the price of loving someone whose lifespan is a fraction of yours. You don't get to die together, you get to die alone decades later, still carrying the weight of everyone you've already buried. Jake knows this too, has to know it. He's got kids, grandkids potentially, a whole legacy that will outlive him in weird hybrid puppies. He's made peace with his own mortality in the way dogs somehow manage to do, living completely in the present because the future is a problem for future Jake. But even Jake, relaxed and philosophical as he is, must have moments where he looks at Finn and thinks my little brother is going to have to do this without me. The show prepares Finn for this loss without naming it. Every time Jake is temporarily gone, captured, transformed, separated by magic or circumstance, Finn has to learn to function alone. Every adventure where they split up is practice for the permanent split that's coming. The show is slowly, gently, devastatingly teaching Finn that he's capable of being a hero without Jake, because one day he won't have a choice. But capability isn't the same as wanting to. Finn can save kingdoms alone, can fight monsters, rescue princesses, be the hero Ooh needs without Jake's stretchy powers backing him up. That doesn't mean he wants to. That doesn't make the empty space where his brother used to be any less empty. Jake's legacy is his kids, his adventures, his philosophy of relaxation in a world that constantly demands urgency. He taught Finn that being a hero doesn't mean being serious all the time, that you can save the world and still make time for sandwiches, that sometimes the best solution to cosmic horror is a nap and some video games. When Jake dies, those lessons remain, coded into Finn's personality like Jake's DNA is coded into his weird rainbow puppies. But lessons aren't the same as presents. Finn can remember everything Jake taught him and still wake up reaching for his brother, still turn to share a joke with someone who's not there anymore, still feel the specific loneliness of being the one who survived. Adventure Time shows us Finn growing up, becoming more competent, more independent, more capable of handling the world's darkness alone. And every step toward maturity is also a step toward the future where he has to, where Jake's mortality catches up with both of them, and Finn becomes the last human and the last brother, carrying memories of mathematical adventures that nobody else will fully understand. The treehouse will feel bigger without Jake in it. The video games will be less fun single-player. The world will keep needing heroes and Finn will keep being one, because that's what Finn does. But he'll do it knowing that the best part of being a hero was having Jake there to celebrate victories and mock defeats and remind him that even heroes need to relax sometimes. Jake will die first, probably peacefully, surrounded by his weird hybrid family and his human brother, who he raised and adventured with and loved in the uncomplicated way dogs love. And Finn will bury him somewhere beautiful, probably plant a tree, definitely cry in a way the earlier seasons never let him. Then he'll wake up the next day and keep going. Because that's what Jake would want. Not grief, not stopping, just continued adventure, with Jake's memory riding shotgun where Jake's physical form used to be. The show never says this explicitly because it doesn't have to. Every viewer who's ever loved a dog knows how this story ends. We're just watching Finn live through the good parts first. The mathematical adventures and dungeon crawls and couch sessions, all of it borrowed time with an expiration date neither brother acknowledges. Sweet dreams, knowing that even in magical post-apocalyptic candy kingdoms, mortality still wins. Jake will die, Finn will survive him, and the adventures will continue, just a little quieter, a little lonelier, a little more aware that mathematical doesn't mean eternal. Some goodbyes you see coming from the very first episode doesn't make them hurt less when they finally arrive. Section 15. Section 15, Sweet Pea's burden, can evil be redeemed? Sweet Pea is a giant baby with a learning disability who contains the essence of extinction in his DNA. He's gentle, kind, loves flowers, and occasionally has nightmares where he remembers being the Lich, the cosmic embodiment of death who tried to end all existence across multiple dimensions. He's Adventure Time's ultimate philosophical question given a body. If you take pure evil and give it a second chance as an innocent child, does the evil go away, or does it just hide until it's strong enough to remember itself? Can you really redeem the irredeemable by dunking it in magic healing juice and hoping for the best? Let's review how we got here. The Lich, after multiple attempts to destroy all life, got defeated by Finn and dumped into the Citadel's healing spring. The spring did what healing springs do: purified, transformed, rebuilt. Except you can't really purify the personification of death. You can only hit the reset button and see what emerges when extinction forgets it's supposed to be destroying things. What emerged was Sweet Pea, a baby. Completely innocent, with no memory of being the Lich, no desire to end existence, just a confused infant who didn't ask to be born from the melted remains of Adventure Time's worst villain. The Lich's power is still there, coded into Sweet Pea's biology like genetic trauma waiting to activate. But the consciousness, the drive, the philosophical commitment to entropy, all gone, replaced by a child who just wants to be normal. And that's the horror. Sweet Pea isn't evil, he's a kid. A sweet, innocent, slightly slow kid who loves tree trunks and helps in the garden, and has no idea that he used to be the last scholar of Golb. But everyone else knows. Everyone who looks at Sweet Pea sees the Lich's face underneath, waiting. They don't see a child. They see a ticking time bomb with a pacifier. Tree Trunks adopts him because of course she does. She's the only character naive or compassionate enough to look at reincarnated extinction and think, this baby needs a mother. And she's genuinely good to him, raises him with love and patience, never treats him like the monster he used to be. She gives Sweet Pea what the Lich never had: kindness, acceptance, a childhood. But Sweet Pea knows something's wrong. He has nightmares. Flashes of memory where he's speaking in Ron Perlman's voice about darkness and death. Moments where his body moves on instinct, magic surging through him that he doesn't understand and can't control. He's haunted by a past life he didn't consent to, blamed for crimes he doesn't remember committing, feared for potential he never asked to carry. The show asks the question that philosophy has wrestled with forever: is evil inherent or learned? If you take someone born from pure malevolence and raise them with love, do they become good? Or does nature eventually overwrite nurture, and the Lich's essence corrupt Sweet Pea from the inside out, until extinction remembers how to speak? Adventure Time refuses to give easy answers. Sweet Pea stays good through most of his appearances, stays gentle, helpful, innocent despite literally being the Lich reincarnated. But there are moments, flickers where something ancient and terrible shows through his eyes, times when he's scared or threatened and power surges out of him that feels distinctly unbabylike. The Lich isn't gone, he's buried, and burial is just temporary containment. In Whispers, one of the show's genuinely creepiest episodes, Sweet Pea is manipulated by his own cosmic destiny. The Lich's consciousness tries to wake up, tries to claw its way back through Sweet Pea's innocent mind and reclaim the body it was purified out of. And Sweet Pea fights it. This scared, confused child fights against the embodiment of entropy, refusing to become the monster everyone fears he'll be. That's heroism on a level Finn never had to manage. Finn fights external monsters. Sweet Pea fights the monster that lives in his own DNA, the evil that's literally part of his cellular structure. Every day, Sweet Pea chooses kindness. He's choosing it against biological programming that says he should be ending worlds. But the question remains, can he keep choosing? Eventually, will the Lich wake up fully? Is Sweet Pea's goodness a temporary condition, childhood innocence that will fade when puberty hits and cosmic evil hits with it? Or is he genuinely his own person, capable of staying good despite being built from the spare parts of Adventure Time's worst villain? The show's later content suggests Sweet Pea continues choosing good, continues being himself despite the weight of the Lich's legacy. But it's never certain, never comfortable. Because how do you trust someone when their DNA is literally extinction? How does Sweet Pea trust himself, knowing that somewhere in his biology, the Lich is still dormant, just waiting for the right trigger? Princess Bubblegum watches him carefully because of course she does. Surveillance state extends to reincarnated apocalypses. Finn is protective but wary, because Finn fought the Lich enough times to know that evil that persistent doesn't just give up. Even Tree Trunks, loving and maternal as she is, must have moments where she looks at her adopted son and wonders if she's raising a child or just babysitting the heat death of the universe until it's old enough to drive. And Sweet Pea carries that, carries the knowledge that everyone's afraid of what he might become, carries nightmares of being someone he doesn't want to be, carries the pressure of having to prove every single day that he's not the Lich, he's just Sweet Pea, and maybe that's enough. Adventure Time's answer to whether evil can be redeemed is maybe. Maybe if you catch it early enough, raise it with enough love, give it enough reasons to choose good over entropy. Maybe evil isn't destiny but choice, and Sweet Pea can keep choosing himself over the thing he used to be. Maybe redemption is possible even for cosmic embodiments of extinction, as long as someone's willing to give them a second chance and a loving home. Or maybe the Lich is just sleeping, patient as always, waiting for Sweet Pea to grow up enough that evil can remember how to speak. Maybe you can't really redeem extinction, only postpone it, and Sweet Pea is just the Lich's longest con, spending years being innocent before finally activating and finishing what Ron Perlman started. The show leaves it ambiguous because life is ambiguous. People aren't purely good or evil. Even people born from literal evil get to make choices. Sweet Pea's struggle is everyone's struggle on a cosmic scale. Fighting against your worst impulses, your genetic programming, the darkness that whispers you're not good enough to be good. Somewhere in Ooh, a giant child is gardening with his adoptive mother, having nightmares about ending existence, and choosing every day to be kind instead. He's not okay, he's never going to be fully okay, but he's here, choosing good despite being built from evil, and that's its own kind of mathematical miracle. The Lich wanted everything dead. Sweet Pea just wants to water flowers and be loved. Maybe that's what redemption looks like. Not erasing what you were, but choosing what you become. Sleep well, knowing that extinction was defeated by turning it into a baby and teaching it to garden. It's the most Adventure Time solution possible. Defeat cosmic evil with love and healing springs and hope that nature doesn't reassert itself before the child becomes his own person. Sweet Pea is still there, still choosing kindness, still fighting the Lich inside himself. Rooting for him feels like rooting for all of us who fight our worst selves daily. Let's hope the garden keeps growing and the nightmares stay just dreams.